Cool. All right, so I'm going to go over a lot of stuff very quickly. I was telling Anna on the way in here that there wasn't a ton of descriptions within kind of the event, so I wanted to just pull out a little bit of everything depending on kind of who's here and hope that everybody walks away with something they can use. So the hopes is that, yeah, after, 45 minutes, everybody has something they can kind of take away with them. Let me make sure this works. On the fly. Okay, cool. So a little bit about me. And, oh, you guys can see that. That's weird. Bear with me here. Put that down there. All right. So a little bit about me. So I'm the CEO of Architecture Quote and Clint Marketing. Basically, yeah, I came into Copenhagen about 4 years ago, and it just so happens the people that I met out here and became really close with happen to be architects. So I figured, why not try to disrupt an industry that is well overdue for that? So I created that. I do a ton of these public speaking events, and after a lot of these things, a lot of people would come up to me asking me if I charge for this kind of thing. And originally I was like, no, why would I do that? And I guess it just wasn't that obvious at the time. So yeah, now I do. So that's what Clint Marketing is. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. I've been in the startup game for 12 years. I've been the co-founder of 6 different startups, so lots of different chances to try and fail. I only have one that was mildly successful, and that was basically teaching veterans how to get back to work. So I won a $4.3 million government contract to basically teach 288,000 veterans and their families basically how to go from the veteran/military world into the civilian life. Yeah, I consider myself a mentor, startup junkie, growth hacker, technical marketer, and all the other things. These are some of the projects that I work on. Already mentioned Architecture Quote and Clint Marketing. I teach the 2-day masterclass over at Talent Garden. So basically it's 2 very long days of listening to my voice over the span of about 18 hours of me just hitting different tools, different areas, how you can take any type of business model and essentially scale it for optimization and efficiency. Again, I love doing these public speaking things. I'll be in Aarhus next week. Is anybody going to that, by the way, the big social media conference in Aarhus? No, it's far. I don't know why I'm going either. So like I'm in. So again, my goal for today is to provide value. I have a ton of stuff that's going to essentially try to give you something that you can either take immediately and implement today, or at least try to put you on your heels and think about some stuff differently. Just so I get a better framework of kind of who the audience is, and I can kind of tailor some of this to the people here. I'm curious, how many people here are in marketing? Okay, cool. How many people here are running their own startup or in a smaller kind of startup? Oh, good. Okay. I thought this was like going to be all insurance people. So good. All right. Well, then we're off to a good start. I have my own issues with the way that people use growth hacking because it often gets kind of supplemented in the terms of like marketing. So everybody puts growth hacker on their resumes and on their LinkedIn profiles now. And it's like, what the fuck does that even mean? And for me, it's basically doing the most with the least amount of time and money in order to get the biggest results. I've only really played, with the exception of the Washington Post, I've only really played within the startup scene. So that means there's no money, right? And there's only a fixed amount of resources. So what can we do in order to scale with the least amount of energy and time in order to get big results? And so that's what this stuff is all about. One of the hardest things that I often come up against is people ask me, how do I learn this stuff? They're not teaching this in schools. Where do I get the information, or where do I get the practical knowledge that I can apply? And it's unfortunate because there is no good answer to that. It's kind of doing the work. It's getting your hands dirty. So I always use kind of the metaphor of going to a mechanic, and basically there's 2 mechanics on duty. One has read a book every year for the last 5 years about essentially fixing your vehicle, and the other one has actually fixed every single object within your car, under the hood, at the wheels. I want the second guy to fix my car because they've actually done the work. They've gotten their hands dirty. And there's a big difference. In terms of understanding how to implement the tools, and I'm going to cover a lot of different tools, it's really understanding kind of how to go about building a framework in your own head. So I've always said marketing is just kind of a bit of mixed interconnected systems that kind of play together. So if you understand content marketing really well, if you can write, then you can start to understand SEO, and you can apply the learnings of SEO into SEM, paid ads, and once you start understanding these different systems, you can apply one system to all the others. So I love this picture because the guy looks super stoned when he's putting in cake. Oh, cake. But I use this for my Tech Festival presentation. I taught basically 2 hours over at Tech Festival about how AI is going to disrupt a lot of marketing practices, how AI-generated content could break the internet. And I use a lot of different tools, and I found that people were a bit overwhelmed. So I inserted this slide. So this is all the different marketing tools you could have chosen to use back in 2011. This is 2014, a lot more tools. And this is 2019. And it is a shitload of tools. I need a magnifying glass just to be able to understand what different areas are in there. And everything's had a bit of a schism. So there are more different categories that are broken out within this. And I imagine in 2 years, it's going to get even worse or better, depending on your perspective. But we're talking over 7,040 different tools that you can immediately pick up and use. And at that point, I don't know anybody that's able to memorize all these different tools. So the concept is pick ones that are useful to you, pick ones that you find, try them out. If they work, great. If they don't, you know that there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 50 different tools that are similar to the one that you're already using. So that's how I've gotten relatively okay at what I do, is just mixing and matching and trying different recipes, different tools. I always kind of use this metaphor of baking a cake. So the concept is, instead of using stevia or sugar, you're using stevia, or instead of flour, you're using, gluten-free flour. It's all different ingredients that ultimately amount to a delicious cake that you can have for your company, your team, whatever. So I wanted to go into marketing funnels because there's a lot of really cool stuff. I was sitting with some folks from MasterCard last week with Anna, and I found that there's a big gap in understanding the marketing funnel from kind of the traditional sense, but also kind of the nuanced new age sense. So this is one look at a marketing funnel. I'm going to show a bunch more. The concept is, first I attract, I bring people to whatever sites that I have. I use a form or something that is tripwire content to basically grab their information. I close them either using email, or maybe it's push notifications, or whatever the case is. And then the last bit is delight. I'm always fascinated by this, but how many people have been with the same cell phone carrier for more than 5 years? Most of us, a lot of us. Right around this time of year, it's so fucking aggravating because they'll put out, hey, get a free awesome phone and also half the price that I normally pay for the next 2 years. And it's like, wait, I've been with you guys for 10 years now. What are you doing for me? And they're like, yeah, fuck you. We already got your money. And that's super messed up. And that's why phone companies and a lot of these really long-term contract companies tend to have the lowest value. And I would say insurance might not be any different, something to think about. But this is that last delight stage that I think is so underwhelmingly not analyzed and not looked at. So how do we delight customers? How do we get people super jazzed up? If you're a startup and you only have 5 total customers and it's the end of the year and you need to make sure that you don't have any churn to keep these guys or girls paying a lot of money to you, make sure to send a champagne bottle. Hey, we made it 1 year, woo! Or bag of cookies or something really simpler. This tin of cookies is €8. Right? But people remember that stuff. So every job that I did and didn't get, I always sent thank you cards, the handwritten kind, because, it's folksy and it's old. But people dig it. And I remember going into my boss's, it was when I was being fired from the Post. And I remember going into my boss's office and seeing that thank you card from the first day that I worked there. And it was still on the last day that I was there. And I realized, having asked other people that I'd worked with that had gotten those, like, well, nobody ever sent me a thank you card. And they put it up in their cubicle. I know it's old school and that's what we do in the States, but it is interesting, just these little things that we can do to reflect on somebody, they have a big effect. And I've seen a number of SaaS companies, software as a service, capitalize on this. So if you've been a customer with me for more than 2 years, hey, guess what? 2-year anniversary, I'm giving you 50% off or 100% off because I love you as a customer and I think you're fantastic. And you'd be surprised how well that actually works, and it's something nobody's doing. I could go on that stuff for ages, but I got to move on. So marketing funnel, this is more of like kind of a paid look at the marketing funnel. So if you're doing a lot of paid campaigns through lead ads, so that's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Google Ads has just come out with lead ads as well. Interest is basically going, I know these people have been to my site, therefore they must have some type of interest, so let me remarket to them. Decision stage is essentially remarketing again, and then trying to find the pain point or the reason that they converted in the first place to drive them to action, which is closing the deal. Here's my fucking credit card, give me your product or service. This is the marketing funnel as it pertains to content. So what is the content that gets people engaged at the very top of the funnel? What is something that's going to take me, the person that doesn't know what your company does, what your service is all about, and how do I bring them to the site to get them to at least think about the concept of paying for whatever it is that I'm selling? Then the next stage would be getting leads. So I need to basically format something in the way of content to direct people to the idea of my product and service, not just trying to entertain, delight, or engage with people, but actually saying, here's what I do, and this is why our project or product or service is amazing. So that's free webinars, case studies, reviews and testimonials are super strong, and it's what salespeople get really jazzed up about. And then getting sales is basically more of demonstrating the product in a more effective way. It's demos, it's all those things. And then retention is everything under the sun. That's free trials, it's giving people, tutorials, it's free consultations, quotes, estimates, all that stuff. Here's another look at the funnel. And honestly, people are just rearranging this stuff and then putting their name on it, being like, I reinvented marketing. It's all the same shit, right? So HubSpot does the same thing. We're like, we broke it down just to 3 big areas. And it's like, great, you're HubSpot. You guys got lots of money anyways. This is Pirate Metrics. This came out about 10 years ago from this guy Dave McClure, and people thought he had reinvented marketing, and they call it Pirate Metrics R, like AARRR. Yeah, and it's super like folksy and lame, but all they did was basically add in a couple of steps at the very bottom of the funnel. And it is interesting that people are able to like sell books on this shit, and it's like, you just reinvented the same funnel. And people are like, yeah, but it's new. And it's like, God damn. So it's not. All you're doing is essentially adding in reactivation, retention, and then something in the way of this revenue/referral model, which is really good for customer success. Here's another look at Pirate Metrics kind of restructured. And here's another look at it broken down into individual steps. It's all the same shit. It's, wrap it in low fat, wrap it in tinfoil, call it low fat. But these are different steps that a lot of people don't hit at the end of the funnel. And I'm going to go into some of them in deep detail later. So let's hit these one at a time, and I'll give a couple of quick hacks onto each kind of step of the funnel. So content based on intent. So this is that top of the funnel. This is the first stage of when people are becoming aware of you. And content has evolved significantly over the last 5 years. So this graphic on the right side was actually a screenshot taken from Brian Dean of Backlinko. If anybody's really interested in growth hacking or SEO in general, I would say Brian Dean is one of the best blogs for that. So search has come down to 4 different areas. So the first area is informational. So I'm looking for the contact page of Talent Garden or best paleo blogs. So I should be able to find that relatively simply by really just looking for something informative. Navigational is, actually I got that backwards. Informational is basically like, what's the capital of Denmark? Navigational is trying to get me somewhere on the internet. So that would be the LinkedIn login, Backlinko contact. And there's some really interesting hacks for this. So there's a couple of different companies that are doing something that's basically calling, it's called brand hijacking. So not a lot of people put out information on how to get in touch with a real person from YouTube or how to get in touch with a phone number for Instagram. If you build a page that is basically around that, I guarantee you're going to rank in your local area because nobody puts that information out. So if you're offering something that really uses those platforms heavily, build a landing page that offers basically brand hijacking by saying, hey, if you love Instagram like we do and want to get in touch with somebody, here's how you do it. And by the way, we're kind of loosely related to them. Here's our service. And people are winning at that game and getting shitloads of traffic. Commercial and transactional, that's where I live. And I think that's where the good stuff is. So under commercial, they have Star Wars posters. So if I'm searching for that, there's a very good chance that I want to buy one of those, right? There must be something in the way of intent behind searching for that. Not necessarily a direct line of I'm coming in with cash in hand, but it means that there is an interest level there. Transactional is where people actually are ready to buy. So if somebody looks up car insurance quotes, it means they're in the business of buying car insurance. They're looking for car insurance today. Buy groceries online. I need to buy something, that's why I'm looking for it. New York to LA flights, pretty straightforward. Somebody wants to purchase because that's why they're looking. And if you think about content based on intent, you can build content around each of these sections and essentially win. And it's really interesting how that stuff is coming together. The skyscraper technique 2.0, there's so much around this, and I've done this in the past. The old version of the skyscraper technique was really simple. How many people have heard of this, by the way? Okay, cool. So for those that don't know, the concept was really simple. In the old days of New York City, it was a dick measuring contest. The tallest building in New York was basically the center of the universe, therefore it was bragging rights. So you get to say, I have the tallest building in the world in New York City. So people started putting flagpoles on top of their buildings saying, now I have the tallest skyscraper in all of New York, even though you have a 50-meter flagpole on top and the floor stopped ages ago. So the concept is, I want to take my competitor's best content and I want to make a better version of it. So if somebody writes something about, I don't know, the 20 best co-working spaces in Denmark, I need to write something that is the 30 most baller co-working spaces in Copenhagen you need to work at. I need to rework the title, it needs to be shorter. But some of the techniques that go around that are really helpful, and it's a goal that is based on getting into answer snippets. I'm going to go into that in a little bit. But these are some of the things you can help yourself rank with. So instead of keyword focus and stuffing the same keyword, so it would be co-working spaces, I do latent semantic indexing. So think of a word cloud. What are the other related terms that go around the concept that I'm trying to get people there for? What is the other intent? Or what is something within this page, this article, that I can get people jazzed up about that's related to my main focus? Table of contents, super helpful. There's a lot of plugins for those that are on WordPress that basically build out table of contents. It allows you to rank in terms of site schemas and having a more structured site and getting those answer snippets. And again, I'll go into that later. But it also allows for a better user experience, which is what Google's all about, so you rank higher. Providing examples. So every one of my blog posts, if you look through and look up the word example, it's examples of, examples for, 3 examples of. You'll see thousands of examples because that's what people want. And ultimately, that's what ranks. So if you're highlighting something in the way of content and showing tons of examples, you're fucking winning. Internal and external linking, super powerful. So you should be linking to all the other blog posts that are related, obviously, inside of your main blog posts that are ranking to be able to continue to boost traffic and boost opportunities for people to see other pages. External linking is linking off pages. And then skimmability, really simple. It's basically nobody's reading mile-long posts. Break it up, line breaks. So make it interesting. Break up the static content. I get into lots of arguments with old school journalists about this, and they're still fucking wrong, but they still love to argue. So how long should my blog post be? So on a rough idea, this was taken from a Neil Patel blog, and I have a feeling that this number has gone up significantly, but if you look at search results pages from 1 to 10, the idea is that right around that 2,400 mark, in terms of words in total, inside of a blog post is where you need to be. I tend to focus on 3,000 plus, and I think it's continuing to go that direction. Every single blog post that I've had that ranks extremely well has been 10,000 words plus. And it should be, and you should put a lot of information there. Go down every possible turn, every little area of interest within a topic that you're covering. Give people information. You'd be surprised how much people want to engage with stuff. Nobody really is looking up 700-word blog posts. And this is, on the right side, this is shares by content length. So 3,000 to 10,000 words get significantly more shares. That's 7.5 to 10K. They get more shares because there's a lot more stuff there. There's a lot more good stuff there. Nobody really needs to continue to develop these 700-word blog posts because how much of a topic are you really giving away or covering in 700 words? That's like 4 tweets. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. Just for the benefit of everybody, long tail keywords are super powerful, and it accounts for 70% of searches. And there are a significant number of searches. Think about the old way that we used to search for just like jeans, right? if I wanted to buy jeans online maybe 20 years ago, I would look up jeans. And that would be it. Now I'm looking up blue jeans, Levi's, 30 by 32, acid wash, on sale Copenhagen. And that's my search. And that's super long, but I actually get relevant search results now. So think about your content that way. You don't need to rank #1 for the most searched term inside of your industry, your service group, whatever, your product. You just need to rank enough across the board with enough keywords that are long tail. And that's actually going to be more transactional in nature anyways. So forget the short stuff. It doesn't matter. I've found a lot of benefits by working with interns, and interns, while they don't have a ton of experience, they are great at researching, or at least okay. So one of the companies I worked at more recently was a company called Valuer, and we put out this top 50 startup cities in the world, right? And we had an intern working on it, and at one point we're like, fuck it, put Helsinki at #2, and Tokyo's had enough awards, let's put them at #50. So the Prime Minister of Finland retweeted the article because we just made it up, like there was no like real metrics, because we said the best. What does the best mean? Does it mean the best ice cream per capita? The best looking people? The best, what is the best? It doesn't mean anything, but people do search that way. So the reality is anything in the way of lists tend to get engagement because people see it as a collection of facts or something that is relevant to what they're searching for. It's evergreen, you can constantly update it, and honestly, memes work really well as well. Another thing to think about on this stuff is updating old blog posts. So when I consistently lost some of the really high ranking keywords that I wanted to go after, I would just reinsert more content around those keywords. So you can see inside of Ahrefs, basically the key phrases or keywords that you're ranking for. And if you see that you've lost a few or you've gone down a couple of slots, great, write an extra paragraph underneath where you've talked about that particular element within your blog post. And shocker, a week later, you're back up to #1. So it's just stealing the spot back. And that's how you need to look at this content. It's this 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. It's essentially 80% of your traffic will come from 20% of your entire content within your blogs or within your website. So our kind of flagship article was 50 examples of corporations that failed to innovate when I was over at Valuer. That single blog post ranked better than any like core page, any main page on the website, and 2/3 of the blog posts as its own standalone page for the better part of a year. So we were driving shitloads of traffic for that. And whenever we lost a really good keyword with a high search volume, we would just write a little bit more and all of a sudden we spring back up. So it's just kind of tricking Google and being tricked yourself, I guess. I always like to reuse content because this stuff takes forever to make. So every piece of content that actually works and gets a lot of engagement should be an ebook, right? And give people a chance to download it. This is what lead ads are for. So when you construct lead ads, say, hey, download the ebook. I don't need to tell you that it already exists as a blog post on my site, but great. You'd be surprised. This is what Tripwire content is all about. So if I give people a chance to download the blog that they're already looking at, they will. And it's the weirdest thing. It's like you're just downloading the same shit that you can read right now, but now it's in a file form, like, yeah, give it to me. I don't understand it, but it's a thing, and it works. So every really long piece of content and great piece of content should be turned into an ebook or some type of downloadable. You know, give me your email in order to do this. And honestly, templates work really well. I do think re-releasing everything is super important. So our #1 content in terms of the 50 examples of corporations that failed to innovate, we reposted that every 4 to 5 weeks. And we get tons of engagement on social media. So why not do that yourselves? If you've spent so much time writing that stuff, it gets buried, re-release it. Once you have 50, 100 articles, you're pretty much set. You can just continue to update the old stuff and continue to optimize. So including everything's super important to me. I added Elon Musk smoking a blunt to a really long post about corporate innovation. And I had to sit down with my CEO. He's like, do you really think that that is pertinent or relevant to a corporate innovation blog post? My answer was, fuck yeah, it is. Because these are people too. The people reading this article want to be delighted. They want to be entertained. They want something to break up the stagnation. Nobody's there to read a white paper or a really overly technical article that doesn't jazz it up and keep people engaged. Now, this content has to be relevant. It has to keep people, at least metaphorically, understanding the topic that you're explaining. but have fun with it. And I think a lot of people miss that opportunity. Yeah, I've added Snoop Dogg doing this. I've definitely added a ton of infographics. People love those. Making it skimmable, super important, and giving people an option or a chance to share and providing value. This is always one of the hardest things to explain, especially when you work with a younger crew, is finishing strong. There is miles of difference in terms of the way that articles come together. There is a difference between meh and amazing, and it's usually that last 10% where it's not going back and adding the internal and external linking. It's not adding the final thought. And you can see this across probably your own articles. The last 2/3, no, the last third of the article, certainly the last 10%, you can tell somebody's phoning in. It's like, fuck, I'm so over this project. I want to work on the new one. And the problem is we all do that, and it's having to work through that. I wanted to just real briefly run across some examples of resources sections that are working. I'm going to show why they're working after this, but resource sections are kind of like the new blog, because the concept is we're looking for a zero-click search. Ultimately, we're looking to inform people quickly, and maybe not everybody wants to consume really long-form content. So the concept is really short URLs and titles and small descriptions packed in with keywords. They're more likely to capture like visible stuff within these answer snippets down here. We've all seen those. And it's often written in natural language. So I want to show a couple examples of companies that have scaled using a resource section, not a blog section. And by the way, if your blog is, well, if it's a subdomain, get the fuck out of here. Right? You can't have blog.yourdomain.com. It's not working anymore. It's basically being scaled as unique, or crawled as a unique site. Doesn't work. But naming your blog /blog or /article is a waste of your time. It needs to be an intent-based keyword. Resources does work. And so the concept is you have this site, Talent Lift, which basically started up right around the tail end of 2017. And they're capturing a shitload of traffic. They have a ton of organic traffic. It's up here. These are the keywords. So they're looking at over 200,000 unique visitors within the span of about a year and a half, 2 years, which to me is really impressive. Nova Resume had a really interesting play where they released an article that was Elon Musk's resume. The dude doesn't need a fucking resume. He's Elon Musk, right? Like when you say Elon, people aren't thinking of a college out in South Carolina. They're thinking of this guy. So they put out this article and it went viral, and it essentially gave them a lot of referring domains, which scaled a lot of their site authority. And then after that, they built a huge resource section, which actually worked out really well for them. 24 slides, really simple company that basically allows people to get presentations done up for them last minute. They built out a lot of really great download the first 5 slides free, like a drug dealer giving you a little bit of crack. It really worked well for them, and they ended up gathering close to 500,000 unique visitors over the span of about 2 years, and they're getting that monthly. And then Propeller CRM is actually really fascinating. It's just 2 guys, and they outsource everything. And they're getting lots of really great content that is posted on really high authority websites. The founder has a previous exit, so it works for them. But why are resource sections working? And if I had internet access, I would show you the video of this. You can search on your phone right now and see how long it takes you to actually get to organic. So the phrase that I put in there was digital transformation. That was when I was working with Valuer. And the concept is you have to go through so much shit on mobile before you actually get to organic stuff. And the reality is it's in a play to make sure that voice is going to show up first eventually. And it's also in a play to make sure that Google is in business to make sure that they're selling you shit. So ads come up nonstop. And I wish I could show you the video. If there's time, I can connect to the internet and show you guys later. But the reality is that this is coming, and this is part of what is going to change the way that we develop online in general. 48.96% of 150 billion searches within last quarter, or I guess it was Q1 of 2019, ended without a click. So that's half of every search is a 0-click search, which means I found my information, I'm good, moving on. So I can ask Alexa, or I can ask Google, or whatever the home-friendly, voice-activated bot is in order to get my answers. And that's where we're going. And that's why everybody's talking about voice this, voice that. And by the way, only 7.2% of those were actually clicks to paid ads. Even less than that was, searches that were on websites owned by Alphabet or Google. So what does that translate for the people that kind of play the game and run the show? That means this. Ad revenue trends. Google generated $32.6 billion in advertising revenue in the second quarter, a 22% increase year over year. Fuck those guys. It makes me really upset because I can't sell my stuff. I can't get in front of people because they're putting so many barriers and ads in the way. And that's all of us. And people don't realize, like, there is no alternative. Like, I'm not going to get on Bing. That's not going to happen. You know, like, and we're laughing about it, like, how ridiculous. But that's a thing, you know? Like, my dad does that, where he's like, I don't know. I use Internet Explorer. It's not even called that anymore. But, you know, it's a thing. And it's so frustrating. All right, so I spent a lot of time on that, but let me go to interest and consideration. How many people here are actually working on or developing, like, paid campaigns? Okay, cool. So I really believe that we have to test our assumptions and we should have a framework to do that. I'm going to brush really briefly over this, but the concept is we can do all the user testing we want, but until we actually test stuff in terms of our assumptions, we'll never know. I use a police lineup in that last slide just to show that there's a lot of different types of purchasing or ideal customer profiles out there. I think it's always important to go down every road and test every different demographic. And the reasons for me buying a product could be very different from everybody else. So I try to test out different types of campaigns. So the concept is I do it by vertical and industry. So basically taking different industries and targeting them specifically and having usually 3 different messaging, so that's more ideal, 3 different messaging campaigns, and then seeing what people actually convert on. I do that with, you know, pain-based stuff. So what is your biggest pain point? And trying to build 3 different ads off of that. Competitor-based. That one's a little different, but what is your unique competitive advantage? 3 different areas on that, and then technology-based. So more of a solution-based thing and trying 3 different messaging campaigns. And then within that, targeting different demographics. And the concept is that actually over time will give you the answers that you need in order to really target and put the money where people are actually buying. In terms of interest and consideration, you know, on organic, it's getting more difficult, but I do see a ton of value in building case studies. Case studies suck, they're super boring, and this is where you have to activate customer success to basically say, hey, these guys love our product, they're a huge fan of our company. Can we send a film crew over there? Can we get a bunch of people on camera saying how great our product is and how amazing our service has changed their lives? Every once in a while, yeah, they're like, fuck it, come on over. And it's a great chance for you to not only solidify the opportunity that you have with these people and maybe even upsell them a little bit, but also a chance for you to brag about how great your service is. Salespeople love these. Reviews are easy. I can sell you fake ones. Product spec sheets are actually super helpful when you do buyer guides, and I see a lot of good stuff inside of the resource section for that. But I'll move on. There, decision and action. So this is where we actually are starting to convert people. So this is one of the things that I'm trying to encourage people to understand. It's every startup that I've gone into within Copenhagen and back in DC. The concept is I need to try to convert people in every possible way or every channel that I can. I need to grab their information and try to find a way to close them or at least get them to beg me to stop reaching out to them. So lead ads are really important if they're surfing on social. Native video conversion tools are super interesting. 23 is a local player. Alpha Voice is one of my old business partners, essentially providing video content that they have to give their email or something in the way of, you know, a tripwire piece of content to watch the entire thing, or at the end, grab their email. Anything that captures email is super powerful. I go into Hello Bar a little bit. Convertful just got bought out, fuckers. Really great service for a little while. ConvertFox was really nice, still is. Unbounce is the most widely overpriced for those that have WordPress sites. Basically CF7, Contact Form 7, and MailChimp capture stuff really easily. For those that are just trying to build out landing pages at scale, WordPress is fine with like Elementor or some of these other tools. I really don't recommend Wix or Squarespace, but people still do it. They're just really bad for SEO. Forms are really interesting. There's been entire libraries of books that have been written about how to convert people, user behavior, that type of stuff. So reducing the number of form fields to 10 or under increases conversions by 120%. So if I know that, why in the fuck am I asking for address, VAT number, just when I'm trying to get people in the beginning of my form? If they're loosely interested, I don't need that much information. If they're really into what I'm selling, sure. But I mean, honestly, capture the least amount of information that you can in order to get them into a buying decision later. Don't put a giant barrier to entry. And by the way, reducing the form fields the number of form fields to 4 or under increases conversions by 160%. And I've seen this with every startup that I've stepped into. It's absolutely true. Single form fields that convert into a next window or a open up window is where the jam is at. This is what a frictionless form looks like. It's using Clearbit to enrich an email address and autofills first name, last name, and sometimes phone number. This reduces the amount of energy and time that I have to take in order to convert. So if somebody puts in that, so alex@uber.com, it should automatically fill in Alex and company name, Uber. That reduces the amount of time that they have to take. I'm trying to remove the barriers to get somebody to convert as fast as possible, because let's be honest, there's so many distractions when somebody's surfing online. Give me the frictionless way to convert. This is all a long way to go to basically explain the foot in the door technique. If I can get you to give me your email address and you've already gotten started with the form, it's very unlikely that you're going to bounce. That's why I start with a single field form and then bring people to a next pop-up window, which is that. And it should be enriched using Clearbit, so it fills in all the fields except for phone number. Bing, bang, boom, I got them in my system, I'm done. And by the way, I capture on that first form, so I can always reach back out and say, hey, what happened? I thought I was your boy. Like, you converted on the first thing and then bounced. That's why a lot of those shopping cart abandonment emails convert really well, because you got all the way up to the very last step and you're like, nah, I decided against it. I got to pay for fucking kids' school. And it's like, no, you need this sweater. That's what you need. You know, and you'd be surprised how often those actually convert. All right, so converting on blogs is really powerful. And this is the stuff that, honestly, it's the longest time on site when people are actually examining your blogs and looking at your landing pages. Give people a chance to convert. These are different types of conversion models. I put this at the end of a lot of the stuff that I do within Valuer. They have a very low conversion rate, but this surprisingly has a high conversion rate. Didn't used to, which is weird. So an exit pop-up using Hello Bar. Everybody hates those, but if you gamify it a little bit, and I'll show you what that looks like, it actually works really well. So this is my favorite one at the bottom, by the way. Not ready to sign up today? Enter your email. We'll send you a surprise. Yeah, like I was like, oh shit, like I want a surprise. Like, what is that? You know, and I was like this close, decided not to. But some of these are kind of fun, you know, like I think messing with your users a little bit is really fascinating. So want to learn how to get 5,000 subscribers for free, and then yes, download the ebook, or no thanks, I'll stick to my gut on how to grow my subscribing base. You're basically asking people to call themselves stupid by hitting that button, which has a kind of psychological element to it. It does work. Web push notifications, I'll never understand why these things work. I think, honestly, it's because people are closing out these windows or hitting allow, assuming that it's one of those cookie kind of pop-ups. So we've all seen these. It looks a lot like this. So show notifications, block or allow. If you're my dad, he doesn't understand what that is. Like, the computer's been affected again. I'm like, no, Dad, it's push notifications. He's like, the fuck is that? You know, so it's one of those things that if you gamify this a little bit, I think it's kind of neat. So here's a gamified version. I'll be the first to get free tools and webinars from Alexander Jarvis at 50 Folds. I'm in. Free sucks, you know. Different way of doing it, but it's really fascinating that these actually do have a high conversion rate, but they also have a high unsubscribe rate. But they do end up getting in front of people, which is more than emails do these days. And then conversion to video, I've already kind of talked about it. That's just a quick screenshot of what it looks like. But 23 offers a bunch of different free trials, and so does Alpha Voice. All right, segmentation is kind of one of my favorite areas, and it allows me to nerd out a little bit. And bear with me because I'm going to go a little bit technical, but it should be fun. So I think this is where the future is going. I'm doing a talk over at Soho in about 2 or 3 weeks. I believe that generally all of us are going to have very custom experiences in the future. So based on my demographics and my previous experience online, I'm going to be served up different things. So Persado is one of these really interesting tools that allows people to essentially change the text on a page based on my behavior. But the concept is, if I know that based on my conversion, I'm a certain company size or I came from a certain medium, then maybe there's certain types of content that I'd like to see more likely than not. So that means I need to be in a different segment on like my email tracking. So if I come in via a campaign that talks only about pain points and I go into my CRM, I need to make sure that I'm sending out emails consistently that are focusing on that pain point or ones related to it. Google Tag Manager allows you to get really, really focused on being able to tag up different forms and where they came from. Segment is like the jam when being able to deliver these leads across different platforms. So I want to be able to say with certainty at the very end of the day, somebody came in through this campaign, this specific ad, and at the very end, they bought. How many of these people continue to buy or are like these people? If this is the most valuable segment that I have within my entire repertoire of marketing, then holy shit, let's put a lot more money in this. And it allows you to make better decisions. You should know whether or not these ads are performing really well in terms of actual clients that are willing to pay money. And this allows you to do that. I think lead scoring is super undervalued. So let's say somebody comes in and then they go into your system. If I'm not measuring how valuable they are as a client, then how am I supposed to know what campaigns are actually working? So there's a lot of different ways to do that. And I think I show that more clearly in the next post. Infer is been around forever. It's what Falcon is actually using these days. HubSpot has their own lead scoring system. They go into a CRM and then ultimately you have to notify salespeople somehow. So it's either Slack or an email. But this is what lead scoring ultimately looks like. So I need to define before these people actually convert, what are the job titles of people that actually make these decisions. Now there is a difference between, well, only CEOs make decisions on our product or service. It's like, yeah, but how many of those CEOs found you first? Or was it more likely that somebody middle management or even below that brought it up to their manager, who brought it up to the next manager, who ultimately put it in front of the CEO? And I think a lot of people make a backwards decision, and it's a bottom-up approach more often than not, depending on your product or service. Company size, if I know it's a company of 3 people, they might not buy my enterprise tool. So that would be graded a 1 versus a 10. Demographics may be a decision maker, depending on if you're selling makeup or if you're selling, I don't know, dudes are weird these days, but depends on you. Behavior on site, this is one of my favorite ones. I think it's super fascinating. If somebody has visited my pricing page, it means they're 10 times more likely to actually buy from me. So I need to take that into account. If they've surfed the pricing page, holy shit, these people are almost ready. Something to think about, demo versus sign up. Demos mean people are actually ready to buy. Signups mean they're loosely interested, and there is a difference. Company revenue is just another measure, but yeah, this allows you to give confidence to the salespeople to basically say, is this cold, is this warm, whatever. CRM integration is super powerful. I use Pipedrive pretty much consistently because I can't afford HubSpot. HubSpot is crazy expensive. It's like $24,000 a year. I don't know how many people can afford that. If you're at a big company, then great, good for you. I can't afford that. But the idea is basically taking all this information and feeding it into HubSpot so that your salespeople have the ability to actually make better decisions and have a little bit more confidence going into the deal. Reporting. So reporting is the bane of my existence. How many people have to put together reports like every 2, 3, yeah, fuck that, right? It sucks, and it's the worst thing ever because 30% of marketers' weekly tasks are just repetition, which means we're not actually doing the work that we're being paid to do. We're just rinsing and repeating, which to me is the most frustrating thing in the world. So use a dashboard, damn it. So Google Data Studio is probably one of my favorites. It's free for the most part, unless you're doing some really upscale stuff. Tableau is wildly overpriced, but super powerful. I used to always use Gecko Board before I got on board with Google Data Studio. It's fantastic. It allows you to show attribution, allows you to show kind of where the leads are going, allows you to show monthly, weekly, daily if you desire, and it allows you to break things out pretty easily depending on what the boss is asking for. This will save you so much time as marketers and as people that are managing these people. Instead of asking for these reports, build a dashboard so nobody has to focus on this stuff anymore. It's a waste of time and a pain in the ass. And here's the frustrating thing about dashboards. Sales won't do it because sales, they're not the technical folks, and their job is to really focus on a day-to-day. Marketing will avoid it because a lot of marketers are like, yeah, I like telling stories and branding. It's like, okay, well, you're not a real marketer, but that's fine. Leadership doesn't understand it because they're like, what's a dashboard? And that's fair. And developers need your guidance. They can build this stuff, but they need to understand the why behind the why. And that's super frustrating. I know, I just pissed off everybody in the audience. Like, fuck this guy. I'm having fun with it, come on. So here's kind of just a loose framework, and I saw people light up the last time I kind of engaged with this. So using Google Tag Manager, I figure out where people are coming in. I can pull in information using the unique tracking pixel data within Google Analytics, send it over via Segment, and Segment basically puts it directly into kind of the same deal. So it's matching up user IDs that are unnamed and unclear until they convert on my form, which then goes over to my database and then feeds over to my CRM. So I have a fully integrated pipeline that then at the very end in that CRM, I can develop reports, or I can take it directly from the database and see, based on what has come through on my sales side, what has actually worked within the database, who is actually converted as a customer. It is very possible. And again, meeting with a backender, giving them access to Google Tag Manager, helping them with the database and understanding what areas you need, all the tools integrated into one. Most of these have open APIs. And this is the difference between a company that knows how to scale and one that's just like, hey, we're trying, and there's a lot of that. And we all kind of get there at some point or another. I want to run through pricing real quick because I think it's really fascinating. How many people are in like a software as a service startup or company? Awesome. Okay, this is for you then. So Ahrefs is not a good example of a company that understands really good pricing psychology. Benefit of the doubt, I got my 4-year degree in psychology. I don't know what I was thinking. It's actually really applicable to marketing now, and I'm kind of glad I did. But at the time, I was like, yeah, like the way people think. Like, it's just crazy. But it works when you start analyzing pricing. So I can certainly send the slides to people if you connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to do that. There's a great link in here to this entire blog post of a guy that basically set up free access to 9 of these different software as a service companies, asked them for their data in terms of conversions, and tried to pull out some learnings. And one of the more fascinating things was, regardless of the model, 80% of SaaS customers convert by 40 days, which means if your trial is 7 days and you just give up on those people and you don't send follow-up emails, you're leaving all the fucking money on the table, all of it. And that's the reality, is people are finicky. They don't want to convert. They don't want to over-involve themselves. So sometimes, these free trials are too short. And then if you don't follow up, you lose them. And an even more fascinating thing is this next one. So every single company we studied had customers who converted more than 100 days after signing up. Most had customers who converted 6 months after signing up. So the reality is, if you are giving up on these people and no longer hitting these people with emails, targeted campaigns after 30 days, you're leaving the money on the table. And too many people are like, yeah, well, they didn't buy after their trial. It's like, yeah, well, continue to hit them. This is what sales is. Like, you have to sell them. And the reality is there's so much opportunity there, and a lot of people aren't hitting it. There's a ton of different tools that I'll go into later. How am I doing on time? I think I have 15 minutes, 7 minutes. All right, I'll go quick. Let me talk just a bit about anchoring, because I really do love pricing psychology. So let's say you need to get like a dresser from fucking IKEA. I don't know. So it's really one of those crazy things. If you think about it, it makes sense. So in your head, you've set a price already prior to even going to IKEA, prior to looking anything up. It's like, well, I'm not going to spend more than $200. Not going to do that. So you set your anchor point, and this is called anchoring. So then you go to IKEA, and you look like that guy. So I used to love going to IKEA when I was single, because I would see all these couples fighting over fucking silverware, and I'd be like, oh, this is the greatest. Like, now I have a girlfriend, and it's like we're fighting over silverware, over meatballs, crazy. But yeah, if the pricing turns out to be double, they've set a new anchoring point, and they're like, oh, so I guess that's how much it costs. So either you leave frustrated and angry, or you're like, well, I guess, maybe if that's the price, then I'll go for something between the most expensive and the least expensive. Or the reality is, hey, maybe on someday in the future, I receive an alert that says, that thing that you really wanted, hey, it's only $50 more than you thought it originally was. It's $249 instead of $200. I think you can make a little budge in my direction. You feel like you got a deal. They feel like they got you as a customer, and therefore you convert. So how do we do that? How do we get people closer? So we insert different psychology principles. FOMO, fear of missing out. So this is one that I screenshotted from wish.com, where this thing costs 95 cents. And my hands started to sweat, because it was like, hey, if you don't check out, you lose out on that 5 cents. Like, check out right now. I'm like, oh, and it really works. It gets something in the way of that sense of urgency. And there are words that you can implement in here. Limited time, only, today, hurry, act now, rush, that kind of stuff. And we've all seen this. And this is no different for software as a service. Right now is the best time to put up these different pop-ups that basically say, hey, leaving so soon? This is our Black Friday deal or Cyber Monday. Get the deal while you can. You can even raise your rates right now and then give a discount so it's the same price as always. Nobody's going to know the difference, right? And there's a lot of different cool tricks you can do for annual pricing. So this is annual versus monthly. It's $20 a month versus $15 a month. But it, to some people, it's like, well, I can't commit for a full year, but I'll do a month for $5 more. It's like, okay, whatever. A couple more little things. So adding the phrase sale or showing the reduced price actually has a much higher conversion rate. Again, if you hit me up for the slides, I can send you this stuff. I have a bunch of different websites that basically show the tricks. Here's a few different versions of these, which I find super fascinating. So the removal of the comma converts way more because it's a shorter looking number. And this is how we think. That's the crazy thing. You know, if we're pricing people out by the day, it seems like, oh, only 49 cents a day. That's less than a cup of coffee. But the reality is, you know, these are the little tricks you can implement and test out using A/B testing. How am I doing? All right, 4 minutes. I'll go through this real fast. User journey, super fascinating. And this is something that nobody really takes the time to do because it's boring and it's not the most exciting thing. But I do see a benefit to doing this. And having something that's written out using Glyphy, Lucidchart, Photolytics isn't bad, Spark Page, meh. But these are different tools that allow you to frame out every single step of the way. So this was me framing out an entire user journey for one of the companies I worked with. The reality is that's way too many steps, way too many steps. And the concept is, how do I reduce that? And the only way to understand the giant picture is to whiteboard this stuff out and then using one of these tools to actually visualize it and say, what can we take away? What is unnecessary? Or how do we combine, condense? Last little bit. Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to do this. I love kind of like I'm like a detective hunting down a serial killer, but these do work. And I think you'll find after you demonstrate kind of the entire user journey and flow, these are the tools that are going to be your best friend. Come around to Customer.io and user.com. Fuck these guys. They just doubled their pricing within the last 3 weeks. It's priced me out of the business. And it is a great tool. How many people have used Intercom? Yeah, it's one of my favorites. So you can actually hit people based on action. But the problem is they've increased their pricing by 200%, and it's only priced out on user. I'm out of the game. I can't afford that. So Customer.io, user.com, there's constantly new ones that are jumping up. I do find Mixpanel to be one of the most powerful in-product or in-platform tools out there. Kissmetrics used to be okay. It's more for like mobile app and that kind of stuff. But if you are trying to measure what users are doing inside the platform to see where people are dropping out or why people aren't converting inside of your platform, that's your jam. Last couple of tools. Streak is kind of one of my new favorites for Gmail. It allows you to see open rates, and honestly, you can do mail merges within that, but I use a bunch of different tools for that. Calendly, super helpful. Instead of doing that dog and pony show email back and forth, can you meet on Tuesday afternoon at 4? No. Well, what about Wednesday? This reduces all of that. Gives you access to my calendar and lets you select whatever day we need to meet based on my calendar. And then something that is, conferencing. Last little bit, Lemlist has been a really great outbound tool that I've used, and I honestly can't say enough good things about it. It's basically come on overnight, and the concept is they have some really kind of kitschy, cool things. So having a picture of you with a merge field over it allows you to seem like you're offering a more personalized email. So coffee, Franz, coffee, Susie, Andrew, whatever. People are like, oh, that was neat. They actually reached directly out to me. It's like, no, dipshit. Like, it's a form field. Like, no, we're not doing that. I did one where I had me doing this to a whiteboard, and it was me seeking investment for architecture quote. And people were like, well, it was really nice that you took the time to write on a whiteboard. And it's like, yeah, thanks. I didn't, but it's cool. And they also allow you to do this kind of stuff. You can't embed actual video into emails, but you can put a little play button over it, and all of a sudden, those get a ton of clicks. So if you're having difficulty actually converting people in email, that's the way to do it. I think I'm running out of time here. Yeah, I'm at 10. I don't know. I always I over prepare. So that's slide 85 of 148. So next time we'll get them. I don't know. I want to save a few minutes for questions. Does anybody have any questions? I don't know. I want to bring value. Like, you guys took time out of your day, so I figure why not? Sure.
I have a question. We are a service company offering services to homeowners, and we're using forms on the website as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious about setting the bar, at the right place. Currently, we've split the form into two, so asking for sort of contact info and then stuff related to the service that we're offering.
Yeah.
But we, of course, we want to set the bar as low as possible while still getting the info that we need to start the conversation. What's your approach for finding the right spot, so to say?
When you say set the bar, what is that?
I mean,
Are you saying like conversion form? Okay.
Or asking for a lot more?
Yeah, so a couple of answers for you. One would be using Google Optimize. Google Optimize allows you to, there we go, this slide. So Google Optimize allows you to do a lot of really cool A/B testing. Google Optimize is free up to, I think it's like 5,000 unique visitors. So like it's essentially one experiment that is scientifically relevant. Optimizely is super overpriced but really powerful. It allows you to basically divert users. So 50% of your users see this version of your homepage or landing page or whatever, and then 50% see this. But the reality is you need at least 5,000 unique visitors that aren't bouncing immediately to be able to make a scientifically justified decision to say there was a noted improvement with this. I've always had the experience of not taking somebody to another page but having a second pop-up window because it's like, hey, I didn't agree to jump into bed just yet. It's one of those things. So email form and then additional details in the second window has always worked for me. But yeah, Google Optimize, super easy to set up and really quite user-friendly. Optimizely is just wildly overpriced, but it's good too. Yes?
So Taylor, you spoke about the length of a blog post being in the range of 3,000 words. Would you say there's a maximum as well?
I haven't seen that. And that's like the most frustrating and crazy thing. So I have seen people that are like the only blog that continues to draw traffic is our one here that's 30,000 words. And it's like 30,000 words, who's that for? But the reality is I don't see a limit. I think a lot of people continue to add content. So I don't have it on these slides. I teach it in the Growth Hacking Masterclass. And you also get that information from me for free if you pay me later. Yeah, but the concept is, you know, you're constantly building your most valuable articles. So what starts out as a 3,000 word article over the span of months is it continues to draw more and more traffic. You should continue to add more content to it. So while it only starts as maybe 3,000 to 5,000, maybe it ends up as 10,000 to 20,000 over time. And Google is continuing to rank people based on how long this stuff has been online. So if it's a 2-year-old article and hasn't been updated and the crawlers are like, there's nothing new here, eventually you lose all of those great, you know, authoritative ranking keywords that at some point you worked really hard for. So I think all blog posts that are ranking should continue to grow. But I don't have an answer for what is like the max. Haven't seen an instance where that makes sense. It depends on the load time, honestly. And if you're not using like a CDN, that's a whole different ballgame. But yeah. Anybody else?
Talking about a 7-day free, 7-day trial.
Yeah.
And you see that you talk about that they convert after 30 days. Why not just skip 30 days trial? Then you don't need to, you know, go back to them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so 7 days for free. I for a second thought you were talking about like Ahrefs and Tim Sulo, which if you want to see some really crazy growth hacky stuff, Tim Sulo from Ahrefs. But I think every pricing structure is different and every business model is different. And sometimes 7 days isn't enough. So when I worked over at Genie Belt, that was construction project management software, super sexy. No. But it was one of those things, in order to get some of the decision makers and stakeholders involved in the project and then get them kind of moving on the first and second action that I needed them to do, it took more than 7 days. So we had to extend it to 30 days. But you know, the reality is, if people are not using it within the first 7 days or the first 30 days, it doesn't matter. So having something like Mixpanel to say, I know with certainty that if users do not do this, they don't purchase. I need to push them to do whatever that one thing is. But every business model is quite different, so it's really difficult to say. And it's also getting people into a platform. Maybe you're giving too much information away or too much value within that 30 days. Like, I'm good. I only needed to use this once. I don't need you anymore. Then you have a problem. Or I've seen that with accounting software. Shit, I've done it with accounting software. Thank you for your 30-day trial. I'm not going to name drop, but yeah, thank you for your 30-day trial because I got my taxes done and now I don't need you. So, like it just depends on the business model. Any other questions? Yep.
Kind of along the same lines, do you see a preference between showing pricing for a SaaS service versus not showing pricing?
Always show pricing. I think there's a benefit by not showing your enterprise level, but showing again, like I don't know your business model, but often it totally makes sense to hide the enterprise pricing because often you are competing on price. But ultimately you shouldn't ever be. It should be value, right? It should always be value and benefit. So I always have this argument back and forth, and they're like, well, our competitors show pricing. I'm like, yeah, and they're killing it. Like, why hide it? Like, what's the point? If you know the price, why not give it away? And we shouldn't ever be selling on that. Again, it's the value and the benefit. Enterprise pricing a little different because you might be going after like RFPs, and that's a whole different thing. So, yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Well, just a follow-up question. Do you see a difference in between having multiple packages within a SaaS?
Yeah, so I go into that a little bit, and I think there's a lot of benefit to. Oh, I think I might have ripped that out. Yeah, I ripped it out. I think it's always a balance, and again, using something like Optimizely will allow you to do that, but it's always going to be either a per user price, per feature price, or something in the way of a usage price. It depends on the business model. It depends on how you end up charging. But yeah, I see so many people constantly iterating and constantly changing. And by the way, fuck your old users that are already paying. You don't need to sit back and go, okay, well, I'll get you on the new pricing. No, you paid for that. You're already in contract now. Now we can negotiate later, maybe. But the reality is I need to test out these models to see what is converting better. So I always continue to tell people, try out different models, see what gets the most people in and regularly paying and reducing the amount of churn so that over time, the lifetime value is this versus this. And it's so difficult to find like the perfect pairing. It's what wine goes with what fish. I have no idea. It's whatever you like and whatever tends to make people happiest, I guess. Anybody else? Sure.
How do you work around all customers getting angry that you give discounts for new entries, for new people coming in?
I think you'd be surprised that very few customers actually reach out and say, hey, what is the deal with this? How come I can't? And on very few instances, yeah, you as a SaaS company, sure. I think it's important to give somebody like, look, I can't do that. This is for new acquisitions. How about I give you 10% off? Would you like 10%? And people are like, well, okay, I got something. And they walk away happy,
Give them presents for the first day.
Yeah, so there's a great tool called Smush for basically condensing images on WordPress. They've done that with me, and they've had a really cool thing where it's like, tell you what, I know you want to leave. What if I give you the next month for $1? Would you stay on board? And I'm like, all right, $1, but I'm going to cancel just before the next month. And then I don't because I forget. And then I'm still with them like 6 months later. I'm like, damn, these guys are good. So it's just a different way. And I've also seen instances where they basically give, here's a coupon code, or we're just going to deduct 10% from your next month. Cool. Are you happy with 10%? I guess. Okay, great. And then you're in, like you're good. So there are different ways to handle it. Some people just ignore it. I wouldn't do that. I think 10% off the next month. And then people are like, okay. So yeah, but with this time of year, like everybody should be focused on those like Cyber Monday, Black Friday deals. Everybody's doing it. SaaS, B2C, B2B, everybody's doing it. And if you're not, I feel like you're missing out on a lot of opportunities. Sure.
Talk a little bit about customer acquisition. Do you see that growing up like Facebook, LinkedIn, is it getting more and more expensive, and where should you go?
Yeah.
Staying there? Because you are giving out free stuff all the time, and you hope for conversion. They convert on price of $1, and
Sure.
you need to wait on to make money on them. They move, and all this.
Yeah, so Google Ads now is, at least in my experience of building enough SEM over the last like 10 years, Google Ads seems to be the best conversion platform. I'm having difficulty getting a really good price point on LinkedIn, super expensive, Facebook, pretty expensive, Google Ads, the cheapest. But in terms of, it really depends on the business model. And
Why are you
yeah,
customers?
exactly. But I actually, I don't know. Let's connect on LinkedIn. I can send you something that I got the other day of somebody basically saying, here are all my ad spends for like the last 6 months. It's like, oh shit. So could be valuable for you. Yeah, cool. I think I'm out of time. I don't know. I could do this all day, but but yeah, I think I'm good. Thanks, guys.